Well, this is a good crowd. I'm really glad to see everybody here. And we're going to get started and as soon as the lights go down here. How's it looking in the back there? Can you all see this?
And more importantly, can you hear us as well?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, we're audio good. All right. So let's. Oh, there we go. All right, we're going to begin.
Oh, this is dangerously dark, isn't it?
Yeah. Now we can trip over things. Anyway, while we plan to interact with everybody, could you please all hold your questions till the end? There's going to be plenty of time. And we have a lot of slides to go through. As you can see, there's plenty of pictures on the wall. Well, we have a lot more than that.
And the question came up, how long will this presentation last? Which was a question I was asking myself at 5 a.m. this morning as I was lying awake hoping that I had provided enough material. Oh, I'll announce Mike, he'll announce me. We're your hosts. This is Mike McDaniel, the most handsome man in Burbank High School, class of 1974.
Not really.
Born in Burbank, attended Burbank schools, were both from the class of 74 in Burbank High. He has lived in Burbank his entire life, works for the city, reprographics department. When you see these top quality photographic reproductions, these are Mike's work. He is passionately interested in history, especially Burbank history. World War II memorabilia is a collection. Member of the Veterans Committee, so you've seen his work before. He's assisted with the Burbank 100th anniversary book. And he's the CEO and treasurer and secretary of the Burbank website.
All right, and here we have your co-host here, Wes Clark. He was born in Los Angeles. We won't hold that against him. He attended Burbank schools all through his life here and graduated with me in 1974. He's lived in Burbank until 1980 when he graduated from college and moved to Northern Virginia, where he works for the Patent and Trade Office for the federal government. Interested in history, boy, is he interested in history. He reenacts the Civil War. He's
Union, not Confederate.
Yes. We're all Northern. Anyway, he is very passionate about it, and if you ever are back in D.C., ask him how to go around, because he can get in and out of the monuments better than anybody I've ever seen. You can do the whole place in less than 2 days, and that's quite a feat.
But you'll get very tired.
Yes, it is not for the weak. So he was in the Marine Corps from 1974.
Okay, we got to stop. Do we have any Marines in the audience?
Oh.
No one?
A Marine spouse.
Hurrah! Okay. Sarah?
And we already mentioned he's a Civil War reenactor and he's the webmaster of Burbankia, but he also is the webmaster of another fine site called Avocado Memories. And it's about growing up in Burbank, which is what started this whole, people started asking questions on his site, and he asked me if we thought it would be a good idea to start something along the line of just Burbank history, and that's where Burbankia got its start.
Now let me talk about the Burbankia website. Everything in this slideshow that you're about to see is on the internet. It's on the Burbankia website. How do you get there? Well, you can look at that difficult URL, http://waka-waka-westclark.com, Waka Burbank, or you can just go to westclark.com. Now remember, there was a guy who ran for president, a general. His name was Wes Clark. Remember him? I am not he, but that's how you can remember westclark.com. Or just Google Burbankia. That'll take you there as well. It was created in December 2003 on the day when I was bored. I just started throwing it together, and we've been adding stuff ever since. Updated hundreds of times since then. We've got 125 plus text files on there. We've got about 1,900 images, and we have the text of 5 complete books on that website. So there's a lot of data on there.
We'd like to, at this point, acknowledge the great work of the Burbank Historical Society. Since 1973, they have been cataloging and putting together many things, all considering Burbank. Every type of historical thing that you can find there. The automobiles from the Moreland Truck Factory in there. They have all sorts of photographs. They have all sorts of historical pieces. If you have not ever been to the Historical Society, which is on Olive Avenue, just on the end of Olive Park there, you have to go. They're now open on Saturdays and Sundays from 1 to 4.
And it is definitely worth your time. It's an interesting place.
Very interesting. So, you want to start with Dr.
No, you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
You could do it.
We're going to start with Dr. David Burbank. Now, we hope everybody does not think that we are named after Luther Burbank, which is quite a common misconception. Dr. Burbank was a dentist here in Burbank, and I just have to ask, I look at that first picture because he was a dentist when he came in 1850, and I'm thinking, do you want this guy in your house?
I want to point something out about these old photographs. He looked sort of starry-eyed because, and I'll do these tangential discussions. That was before the era of panchromatic black and white film. So if you had blue eyes, the chances are it would look like you had no eyes at all because the film wasn't properly catching the blue. So he was a very blue-eyed man, obviously.
And we see him in a later photo there in 1885. Here's his house on, which is where Warner Brothers is currently now. He had a huge farm and he raised sheep on basically what's Warner Brothers, Forest Lawn, and all of that area down there on Forest Lawn Drive and past Barham Boulevard there. And he had a huge farm down there and he raised a lot of sheep, and that was his main industry. And here we have a picture of Dr. David Burbank, and towards the end of his life on a horse, and apparently we figured the scene is probably somewhere up here on San Fernando Road, which was the center of town, between basically Olive and Alameda Avenue.
You don't see that picture very often. It's kind of rare.
Yeah, you don't see him in that state. But isn't that a magnificent horse, though?
Oh, let me go through this one.
Yeah, this one.
Now, what I can do is, I'm not going to read it, very busy thing, I'm not going to read it, but what I can do is I have access to the Los Angeles Times database, and I can do structured searches. And the database goes all the way back to the 1880s, and it comes all the way up to, I think, the 1980s or so. So it's about a 100-year database. So this is the obituary of Dr. David Burbank from the Los Angeles Times. The highlights are, he died in Los Angeles on his residence in Main Street. So he did not live in Burbank when he died. He died in Los Angeles. He's called a pioneer, a rancher, a dentist, a real estate investor, a building, and a theater impresario. And we'll discuss that in a moment. His theater in Los Angeles was his abiding hobby in his final years, according to the obit. And he was obviously a Mason of very high standing in Scottish Rite. He was also a Shriner. Oh, and that was from 1890, I forget. Anyway, don't try to back up. Now, the Burbank Theater, interesting place. I like these old crime films, these films noir as they're called, from the 40s and 50s. And I was watching one from the 1950s called I Was a Communist for the FBI. Honest, that was the name of the film. And it takes place in the downtown Los Angeles because I recognize some sights. And the protagonist is walking down the street, and then I see in back of him this big neon sign, Burbank. So I'm thinking, Burbank? You know, what's Burbank in Los Angeles? What's that all about? So I got on the phone after I finished the film, and I called my father-in-law, Don Billieu, Burbank High School, class of 1945. And I said, hey, Dad, was there a Burbank Theater in Los Angeles? And he started laughing. Turns out it was a burlesque. It started out with the best intentions. Dr. Burbank founded the Burbank Theater, and it was meant to be a place of high art, and for many years they did do legitimate theater. But at some point it sort of took a left turn and became a burlesque house. Well, as you can see, Burbank's atom bomb dancers and one thing or another. Well, my mother-in-law is named Velda, and there was a stripper at the Burbank Theater named Velda. So my father-in-law told me about that. He said when they were first married, they got a lot of kicks out of that. So Velda was one of the atom bomb dancers in the Burbank Theater. Oh, and that's a shot from 1973, 74. You can see the Pinto going by in the front. That's when it closed.
This is the obituary of David Burbank's brother, Frank. It mentions that he is the last of the line. He was unmarried, had no children, and he was living at the time with Dr. David Burbank's daughter. And let's see, her name was Mrs. Griffin. Anyway, bottom line is he was touted as the last of the line. I think one of the most important things is where it said he owned land. Up here over here, he apparently bought the Providencia Rancho, and purchased the large tract, where does it say? Anyway, bottom line, he owned the center of town as we know it today.
Frank Burbank.
Frank Burbank did, not Dr. David Burbank. And I think this was a very interesting revelation, which until we found this obituary was probably lost to history. But anyway, so he owned at least half of Burbank, but you never hear his name mentioned at all. You always hear Dr. David Burbank. And when we built the statue on the far side of town there, he was also the, Dr. Burbank was the one that we mentioned.
So this is from 1903, and I always used to wonder, why aren't there any Burbanks in Burbank? You know, have you ever been to school with a Burbank in Burbank? No, you haven't. Well, this is why. He was the last of the line, Frank Burbank. I also like his name, Frank Burbank. Anyway.
Very rhyming. All right, we're going to get into some musical history of Burbank here. And Burbank is a very musical town. I don't know if you know that, but we're very into this. And we're going to start off with a question. Does Burbank have an official song?
Now, if you were at the celebration yesterday, you heard a good one. I think that was generated by the Disney Corporation, but they played a Burbank song, Happy Birthday. I thought that was pretty cool, but we have a...
Yes. In fact, we have two.
Sort of.
And here's the first one. In Burbank, it was the official song written by a boy named Code Morgan, a Burbank High School graduate of 1925. The work also has the music by Morgan in a foxtrot rhythm.
Foxtrot, that's Burbank.
And I got to tell you, I like this thing. I especially like the line down here. There's a happy throng. You guys feel like a happy throng here?
Yeah. Like a happy throng day.
Happy throng day.
Yeah, but just 10,000 strong. I passed a sign that said Burbank's now over 100,000 residents. So it's grown.
Yeah, it's grown a lot. But anyway, so you can see that we have a very gifted song here. I like it.
Oh, here's a good one. Yeah. Don't let your footsteps fade. When you start to come this way, for you will surely stay until the judgment day. In Burbank.
So those of us like me who lived here all our lives, we're in trouble.
Let me do the next one.
Okay.
Burbank's official song. Mike found a Burbank community book from 1944 that contained this interesting set of lyrics by W.P. Kaufman, one-time postmaster, former owner and publisher of the Review. And this one is, have you ever heard the Civil War tune, Tramp, 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 the Boys Are Marching? Dun, 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 dun. I perform it for you, but no. But I do like the chorus. Where is it? When we say bank, 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 we bank on Burbank. You know, that's kind of cool. Bank on Burbank every day. So anyway, so we have two official songs.
Sorry, I'm getting into it.
So it's a Kiwanis song, and you can see there's some high spirits and maybe some alcoholic liquors.
Well, I want to point out, and that's what makes us want to get right up and sing. There we go.
Please stay seated.
And while we're on the subject of songs,
oh, I got to do this.
This is yours.
This one's mine. This one came with something of a surprise. The story of Edward W. Spencer. Now, you know that we've had heroes living here in Burbank because we've had a lot of military veterans coming from here, and there's a lot of test pilots during World War II and whatnot. Chances are you haven't heard of Edward W. Spencer. On September 8, 1860, it involved a steamship, the Lady Elgin, collided with a schooner, Augustus, in the waters of Lake Michigan in Illinois. Lady Elgin was carrying more than 300 passengers and crew. Most of them died. Only a handful reached the lifeboats. Many victims held on the floating debris for long hours in the cold water. It was a dire situation. 17 people were saved that night by a Northwestern University student named Edward W. Spencer, who battled the breakers for 6 hours. An experienced swimmer, he tied a rope to himself and hauled people. An exhausted man, he hauled them to rescue. And having reached the limits of his strength, his body covered with scrapes and bruises, Spencer passed out. He woke up at his room in Evanston, where his brother William waited on his recovery. Edward's first words were, "Will, did I do my duty? Did I do my best?" This is clearly an extraordinary young man. In 1924, Ensign Edwin Young heard Spencer's story and published a song that draws a spiritual lesson from the incident. And here's the song. It's a Methodist hymn. So there was a Methodist hymn that was developed from the words of this young man, called "Have I Done My Best for Jesus?" a Methodist hymn. I won't sing that one for you because I don't know the tune, and I'm not here to sing anyway. So what has